Welcome to Busted Speakers. This is Alex,
And this is Eddie.
and today we're doing our tentative first classic albums review. We're not going to signify that it's a classic album, we're not going to do anything special, but we are reviewing a classic album just because, why not? We should review more fun stuff that we want, not just new releases all the time, just to keep things fresh. I know I've started the random album review series, but this is not part of that. We chose to review this just because I've got my mate Eddie here and he wanted to review it, so we are. Do you want to talk about the album a little bit, or just
Certainly.
what it means to you? Because
Definitely. Well, this album is called Six Kiss. It's by a very controversial rapper called Lil B. Whether you guys have heard of him or not, it's really worth checking out just any of his catalogue. He's very, as I say, controversial, and not just because purely of the music that he creates, but just because of the personality that the guy has. And I know that's like not too new when it comes to rappers, especially. It seems that a lot of people nowadays, maybe not so much with bands from the older generation, but especially rappers nowadays, a lot of people seem to enjoy them not just from the music that they create, but just from the personality and what they're like
yeah,
outside of the actual music. And so that itself is Lil B, where he's actually controversial. It's the amount of music that the guy's released, the things that he's came out with. Obviously, putting himself in such a high pedestal, is like overall outlook on life and being, as he calls, positive, or as he really calls, based. He released an album called "I'm Gay," which obviously was very controversial at the time. But forgetting all the controversy, just go ahead and say that Lil B is one of my favourite rappers, unironically. I think the guy is just a wonderful caricature of what the modern music, especially rap, is in general. The fact that this guy has literally put out thousands and thousands of songs in his recording as a solo artist, never mind the music that he done as between when he was in a band called The Pack, which he released in 2006 or 7.
yeah,
This is purely in his solo career. He's not only hopped on so many songs, but he's hopped on so many genre-defined different songs. And genre-defined is definitely a word that we should use for this album, Six Kisses. I think is a second official release under his own solo name, which released in 2009 was extremely ahead of its time. And again, ahead of its time is again a word that I would put with Lil B. But this album definitely really kickstarted the subgenre, which is cloud rap. And if you really don't know what cloud rap is, it's basically, imagine hip hop, only sounding extremely ethereal and euphoric, and just like extremely heavenly sounding. It's just like it's very bass heavy, reverb heavy. Usually incorporates warped and sort of abstract and sort of very different woman vocalists, usually taken from like Bjork and Imogen Heap, especially around this earlier time, who just so happened to release a cappella music, so it was easy to use because since it's a cappella, they could easily incorporate it with producers' own beats and obviously create their own instrumental from that aspect. But basically, if you have ever found it interesting to look into hip hop, which is very cerebral, then this is basically the album to go to, because it's basically the debut of this subgenre. This not only is the debut of the subgenre, but is the debut of Clams Casino, who's definitely one of the most well-respected hip hop now R&B producers that's going on in modern times. Now the guy is obviously renowned for doing work with ASAP Rocky and many other different artists,
yeah, yeah,
but he's most well known really for his work with Lil B, because a lot of the songs that's on Six Kiss is very just like, it is the start of cloud rap. And in fact the first track on here, Birth of Rap, is basically what I've described cloud rap in a nutshell into this song, as well as many other songs on here. But overall, my opinion of this album, I think it's a classic, not because cloud rap just so happens to be one of my favourite genres, forgetting subgenres, ever, just because I just love that sound, but because I feel that Lil B, despite criticisms of him being constantly offbeat, making trash lyrics, despite a lot of that being just done for comedic, entity, I think a lot of these songs he's really on point and actually does really suit the sound of cloud rap and helps push it forward, because a lot of cloud rap, despite obviously talking about the sound of it, but the lyrics are usually based on things to do with heaven and being happy and stuff, which Lil B, you couldn't ask for a better artist to really kick off that sound, because he's such an optimistic person on this record especially. And again, talking about the first track, Birth of Rap, that's just an absolute classic in hip hop, I'd say, recent times.
Yeah, definitely.
The guy, there's no chorus or anything, and it's very stripped back. This album is extremely well produced and just a lot of sounds going on here, which we'll go into later, I'm sure. But this first track's definitely probably the most simplistic one. It's literally just some sort of vocalist being backmastered with reverb and just a very simple hi-hat and a very simple 808 just going on, and just Lil B just spits over it. No chorus or anything, just continues going in and in and in. But it's just so well done, especially as well because most people would actually think he's a bit iffy when it comes to lyrics, but since it's so stripped back, you'd think that since you would pay attention a little bit more, that would really get rid of your rose-tinted glasses, because if you're paying attention to the lyrics, you would assume that Lil B would be a bad rapper. But honestly, he puts in some really interesting concepts on just the first song alone. Just going from just thinking on the top of my head here, he mentions like classical artists, and obviously name drops Soulja Boy, Lil Wayne, and just very interesting lyrics, and obviously very funny. But the second track is also an extremely not only interesting song in terms of its sound, but is probably the most popular song by Clams Casino, which is I'm God. And it's interesting, we touched on this a bit before, Alex, we were just talking before and just general conversation, is that I'm God, this song, obviously this album came out in 2009, but the instrumental wasn't officially released until 2011 to 12 when Clams Casino put it on one of his own instrumental mixtapes. And this is just coming from me, but it's hard to call this a classic and enjoy it in the context of how I was listening to it for the first time if I heard this back in 2009, because I heard I'm God, the instrumental first, and then I've heard Lil B's version. And it's sad to say, but me personally, Alex might disagree, but I think this is one of the only rare times where sadly I think Lil B doesn't really suit the instrumental that's going on, because I personally feel he is a bit offbeat. But not only that, but since the music's so dense, I can imagine obviously it is rather hard to actually create some sort of basic structure to go over it, because it's such a wonderfully produced song. But it's probably hard to actually get his voice over what's going on, because there's so much going on. But I think this is really just one of the rare occurrences where it happens. The only other time where there's any problems between both Lil B and the music itself is that there's a song on here called What I Mean, which is just badly mastered. It sounds terrible. It's distorted and really badly compressed to the point of where it actually, when it peaks a certain amount of volume, and Lil B's obviously rapping over it to increase the volume itself, it just goes really noisy and just sounds like crap, which is, it's bad in itself, but especially if you want to have a very nice soothing sound and you're just getting bombarded with this horrible crackling noise, it's really a bad contrast there. So that's a song I'd just skip, despite it probably being a good song if that wasn't happening.
Yeah, I think it is a good song despite that. It's just, it is severely got problems with it. I mean, the chipmunk altered vocals, I mean, that I don't usually like them in context of music, but it depends what context they're used in, like everything else. And in the context of cloud rap, they're definitely a crucial key part to just the whole sound. And there's nice piano playing and good rapping as well, generally. Like, I like the ad-libs, but it is the compressed vocals on What I Mean that really, really doesn't sound good, and it kind of ruins the song. But there's good lyrics, even in the Chipmunk vocals, like the "I want to see dragons in my dreams." That's a really good cloud rap lyric, even though it's from the Lils. And do you want to go back to "I'm God" just for what I think on it?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
The thing I was thinking with this is that I feel like even the worst rapper couldn't ruin this beat and could still make a kind of good song. Like, a good song's a good song is a good song. I mean, just it depends. Like, obviously, you prefer the Clams Casino original because you knew that before, and Lil B doesn't, to you, add so much to this. But it still is, removed from that, a good song because that's still there. But so I was thinking that Lil B is a good rapper and he does some good stuff here. Like we mentioned before, we were doing this review, the first line of the final verse. Yeah, is this what you really want? You got me in the flesh now. No, I'm not stressed out. I'm God. I'm in the best out. I said before, it's one of the most satisfying sets of lyrics I've heard in rap in a while. It just woke me up, and I think he brings it back a little bit. So I'm not so critical about Lil B here. I know you like him anyway, and probably don't mind him too much, but prefer the other version. I just think, I just thought this was pretty decent anyway, but he does take the back seat to the instrumental, definitely. I will agree there.
But yeah, like I say though, that's really put that, and obviously we just said all. Is it what I mean?
What? Yeah.
And we were joking before, we said, because you weren't sure if it was actually Lil B who produced it, because that's why it had such a problem with it.
Well, I didn't have a credit, so I was thinking maybe he produced it, but we were thinking probably some uncredited guy who tried doing it and then wanted to be uncredited, but I guess Lil B liked the song enough to release it anyway. I mean, it is still pretty good, but it's just got problems with the production. Those do exist. And I was like replaying it thinking, is this just my end? Like, have I got a bad crypt copy of it? I don't know, some like badly bit rate or something. But no, it was
just a producer
production.
who just accidentally really created a really terrible version of it, and he just went, "Oh shit, I fucked up with this one. Get my name off this, Lil B." And he probably just went, "Nah, I'm the bass guard. I'm gonna release it whatever. Swag." And that's it.
That's my career over. That's what he'd say after that. But yeah, and the instrumental on "I'm God," I was saying earlier, I think it's actually, he reuses it. I think he like changes it about, because on "I'm the Devil," I think he like makes it a bit harder, a bit similar to "What I Mean." I think that was a bit like, I don't know, I think there was a higher end or something, but it sounded harder than on "I'm God," and I think Birth of Rap had some similar elements, or at least
which is
copied
suitable
off.
as well,
Yeah.
though, because "I'm the Devil" is all about Lil B facing his fears and trying to fight his literal inner demons, and saying that he's now the devil. That's my personal opinion, that the demons have won, and that he's became and encompassed the demon that he was fighting. So it kind of suits the idea that it is sounding a lot more, well, literally hellish. But I think that's worth talking about now. I mean, the lyrics themselves. If you're new to Lil B, or you've always had this, general assumption that he's just talking absolute trash and never actually creates just what you would typically find in a hip-hop track, then there are honestly a handful of tracks here where you will be pleasantly surprised at how good he sounds. And I'm talking here Walk the World, Beat the Odds, Based, Rolls Royce, and especially you would say in MySpace. Interesting that it's called MySpace, I want to say as well, is because that's really where Lil B tried to get his popularity from, because he just completely bombarded MySpace with like several other different accounts. Like MySpace had a certain amount of limit to how much music you can release, but you release that much, he created like 15 different accounts.
Wow.
Just so he could put on and plug all of his music. So I just like to think that just calling it MySpace is just saying, yeah, I'm God, I've just said, but I'm definitely the God of MySpace. And it helps with this instrumental, because despite still being a very well produced song, it's looped quite consistently throughout the whole thing, and instead of what Lil B does occasionally do on here, which is create a form of hook, he just goes in kind of like Birth of Rap and just spits a lot. And again, the lyrics are generally really good, so it's worth noting about that. But yeah, like I say, I've mentioned about 5 or 6 songs there where it is just like, this is like a proper conscious rap song, which I wouldn't be surprised could have came out in like the mid 2000s on a proper like produced and
Like
properly
Common
labeled.
or something.
Yeah, maybe, I suppose.
Getting there.
Yeah, on an actual label, but obviously never got to that point. So I think you will be surprised with that aspect. And also, it's worth noting as well that he name drops, as we said, Lil Wayne and Kanye, and I think it's interesting that he talks about that, and Drake as well on Based.
Yeah, that
because
was
those
weird.
3 artists all seem to be some sort of like influence of some sort of for Lil B, because definitely Lil Wayne and Kanye at this time were experimenting and hopping onto very different, diverse instrumentals and doing their own very unique and quite abstract sound. And so, since Six Kisses is a very diverse sounding album, I think that actually also shows that where Lil B has got some of his ideas from. Not to say that Kanye or Lil Wayne ever done anything this sound, but I just feel that it might have been a case of where Lil Wayne actually got some of like the ideas of just pushing himself forward and just doing whatever. And I just want to talk about like some of my personal favourite tracks, if that's cool. I mean, I've said Birth of Rap I love. I mentioned obviously the instrumental of I'm God. I love Walk the World. Based is great. But some of my favourites, because I've mentioned how I love Cloud Rap so much, it's just when just both the instrumental and Lil B's lyrics and just his overall sound just go hand in hand and intertwine as perfect as possible, which does happen on a lot of spots on here. I want to say the song Riding, I'll just call from track 9, Let the Eagles Go, and especially the song All Alone. They just work so perfectly. Just if you like purely just the sounds and the scope of this album, I'd try, for example, the full song of what I'll just call again Riding, because the last 30 seconds kind of has like an outro, and it's just bliss. It sounds amazing. It's so good.
Yeah, Let the Eagles Go. I wasn't too sure when I was listening to it. It's a very carefree song. Is it a metaphor for letting your brain go on marijuana?
I'm not sure.
That's what I thought, because I don't know. It's definitely a vibe of that, and it's a nice relaxed chorus, very carefree. And I also like how he shouts out the producer Keyboard Kid. Some low like keyboard notes get played immediately after that. Nice touch there. Makes me think that he actually had he was working with some producers. They weren't just sending him beats to rap over. Because I'm not sure Clem's Casino and Lil B's relationship. I'm guessing it's like a lot stronger now than it was then. I don't know their relationship really.
Right.
But MySpace, that was another favourite of mine just because it showcased Lil B's talents completely well. I mean, it's just him rapping with no short hooks, which I don't feel like are the real key to the songs anyway. Like, it is basically the production and his verses that really do it for me. Like, sometimes the production, like the chipmunk female vocals, is the hook, but whenever there's like a weird like hook that like slows the song down, like the hook on Based is like a weird soul thing, like I just wanna be based. It's kind of funny because it comes out of nowhere, but I'd say that is the weakest part of that song. I don't know, it does still work. It's just, I'm glad that there are some songs where it's just him going off spitting bars like that one and Real Plex. They're just him, just one solid block of bars to go through.
Do you not like the hook on Rolls Royce?
That song was like, just going to that song in general. So that song's like him saying you should hustle for the things that matter, like providing for your family rather than material objects to like stay grounded in the game.
Mm-hmm.
The chorus is quite simple, and it shouldn't work so well, because I thought the one on Beat the Odds, Beat the Odds is like 2 verses and then 1 chorus connecting them. Like, he doesn't repeat choruses unnecessarily too long, which I like, because some bands like Iron Maiden, I know that's not comparable at all, but they definitely overplay their choruses. I like that he doesn't do that, like, because sometimes they are the weakest point. But yeah, the chorus there was okay.
I I want to also name, like I say, the song "All Alone," which is very on the fine line of not working, but somehow it does. It's an extremely explicitive song, just him talking about how he just basically wants to get as many women as possible, but has a bit of a twist in the bridge on it, saying how he's got apparently something like 600 million bitches and I'm still alone, which is funny, but also again kind of doing with, as he mentioned, Rolls Royce about material things not mattering to him. But the instrumental, I have to mention, is just extremely weird. It has two female vocals going on at the same time, but also on it is like a very strange jazzy saxophone playing on at the same time, and it's just, honestly, it's like the whole album is dreamy, but if this is a dream as well, it's almost like a nightmare. It's like a fever dream because it's just so nuts.
I also want to touch on What You Doing. I think that's actually a great song to end the main album. I love the so high part, and some great use of piano. Like, if you listen to the What I Mean song, I was like a bit annoyed that was like a great piano line that didn't quite work because of the production. I feel like this is one of the best on the album, but I can't really talk too much about it. Like, he is saying he wouldn't let money and fame change him, but then I get the whole vibe that he like rolls with it anyway. And also, I think that this being, I know there's like bonus tracks. You're saying one where he like raps over the X-Men theme or something.
Yeah.
But this is like the last track of the main.
I think it's a good cool down. I think
it's also. I don't know what you think of this, but I feel like I don't know how much this was used in rap before this album, but this might be another influence through the years past, like after this. I feel like repeated lines, right, like the same thing, or just like something after it. Like you say a line and then like you do something, or something in post-production. Like on here, he just repeats the line very quickly to add a lot of catchiness. I feel like that's not used today, not just in cloud rap, but in like trap as well. Like People by Migos and Future does it too. Maybe just sound effects. Like he does the whole line here. I don't know if that was done before this, but if not, I feel like that's another influential aspect of this album.
Alright, well, I personally don't have much knowledge in if it was used consistently in previous hip-hop outputs, but...
Well, it must have been used before. I mean, some of these producers must have been around before this, but I don't know if they were the ones who made that happen. Also, I want to quickly go on to I Want Your Bitch. Now, this is not a bad song. It's fun, it's trashy. Maybe some people knock Lil B for a song like this, but it's not trying to be the deepest thing ever. It's just a brutally honest song about how sexually active Lil B wants to be with this bitch. It is a weird side of Lil B we don't see so often, but it still feels like a real part of him and part of his persona. And I feel like it's the first time the music perfectly complements the album cover. Like, yeah, the album cover does work really well, like heavenly vibes, but this song does, like, and I like the instrumental. It sounds like it's sneaking around in the background from side to side in mysterious ways, and I feel like it's the most pronounced instrumental, like the most whoa, like it comes on, and some of these instrumentals are quite mellow, just simmer in the background, but this one definitely is on the ball. It's moving. It's very fun. And the weird ad-libs that Lil B does as like a valley girl towards the end is a really funny part. I can't knock it, there's no deep meaning to be had there, but I like that song. There's like even the worst songs on here, like I guess that one technically is, they're not bad, so...
The problem I have with them and the song Pretty Bitch as well is that...
Yeah, that song was a bit weird.
I like the songs, but I feel like they're very weirdly placed in the actual album. I wouldn't have minded if it was. I thought it would have made sense if it was like after I'm the Devil, because that's obviously when his like demonic and like evil parts of him like end up like coming to form. And so if they ended up playing after that, then that would have made sense, because the whole album up until that point was literally about a guy struggling to get fame and forgetting about materialistic things. And if it built up to a contrast, and then it slowly went into those songs, and then maybe had one other song that was a bit more of a cool down, which it is there, what you're doing, then I think that would have made more sense. But instead, the songs are kind of randomly placed and just makes it feel a bit more inconsistent, which is honestly the only real downfall about this album.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure if he was specifically thinking about the sequencing of the album. Like, he did well putting the first, like, 5 tracks together, but I don't know, for some reason, and I know it's not fair, I don't, like, view the sequencing on rap albums to be extremely critical. Like, I do view them as a set of songs a lot of the time. I know I should get out of that mindset, and I don't know, something like mixtapes, you can definitely get away with thinking like that. Just a couple of songs put together, but this is, as we're winding down now, a classic album, I'd have to say. I know you really think that way. I've only come round to that way of thinking just when listening to it. Like, I only became aware of the fact this is the first cloud rap album, groundbreaking in that aspect, and, you know, kickstarting Lil B's career, kind of. I know he had big, higher profile releases than this, but yeah.
Yeah, so overall, I'd give this album 8.5 out of 10. Definitely in a classic sort of status, and most definitely when it comes to just hip hop in general. I really recommend you guys give this a shot if you haven't. Doesn't matter if you're a Lil B fan or not. Doesn't matter. Just give this album a genuine shot and just see what you think of it. I think it should please many different people, especially people who are really enjoying like the new sounds of trap rap and cloud rap. It'd be interesting not just from a historical sound point. I'm saying historical, it's only bloody 8 years old, this album, but you know what I mean. Just going back and actually finding what really helped innovate the sort of sound that you get nowadays. It's interesting from that aspect, but even then, it's just a generally really good album. Really, really good lyrics, fantastic production from a load of range of really good producers, and is overall just, like I say, just a classic album in just hip hop in general, and probably the album to go for if you've never tried cloud rap.
Yeah, here's the thing though that I thought about just there. A lot of groundbreaking albums that kickstart genres or at least experiment around to where new genres or subgenres come around, they're really only remembered, rightfully so to be fair, because of that innovation. They're not remembered because quite a lot of the time they're the best of the genre. But I feel like a lot of this is still the best of cloud rap, and it's the beginning of it. And I feel like it's extremely noteworthy in that respect. Like, think about like the first noise releases were probably not the best of the genre, but are remembered because they started noise or something like that. But the best here is the best of the genre, and I definitely say check this album out if you want to try both the genre and Lil B, because it definitely cemented my view of him as a artist to check out a lot. And yeah, I'm going to give this album 8 out of 10. I agree it's also a classic. A few production problems and a few tracks that don't fit so well with the cloud rap formula or something like that, or just some more fun trashy songs that are still quite enjoyable but still kind of bring the score down despite them still being quite decent. So yeah, 8 out of 10, 8.5 from Eddie. We both think this is a classic album.
Yeah. Swag. Thank you, Bass God.
Yes, thank you, Bass God. Thanks for listening. I hope he does listen. Nah, he won't. But thanks for listening to this review, guys. Check us out on social media. Give us feedback. We'll try and take requests if we have time. It really does depend on people recording together if we can find time. But yeah, and check us out on social media and check out our other videos. Thanks, guys.
See ya.